The call came in early, the kind of call that splits a life into before and after. Grace Platt answered the phone expecting something ordinary. Her son called often. Sometimes it was small talk, sometimes it was complaints, sometimes it was nothing at all. But this time, there was something different in his voice. Flat. Empty. He didn't ease into it. He didn't hesitate. He told her he had killed his baby. For a moment, Grace couldn't process what she was hearing. It didn't fit into reality. It didn't make sense. There are some sentences the human mind refuses to accept, no matter how clearly they're spoken. She tried to keep him talking. Tried to understand. Tried to hold on to something that would make it less real. But he didn't explain. He didn't panic. He didn't cry. He simply told her he was on his way to New York. And then the call ended. Grace's body gave out beneath her. Her hands shook so badly she could barely dial, but she forced herself to call 911. Her voice trembled as she tried to repeat what he had just said. "My son just called me. He said he killed his baby, and he's on his way to New York." Within minutes, police began moving. But they didn't yet know what they were stepping into. They didn't know that this wasn't just a single crime. This was the end of a story that had been building for decades. Stephen Platt had always been difficult to understand. Back in the 1990s, he lived with his mother in New York. Neighbors described him as quiet, withdrawn, sometimes polite, but unpredictable. He kept to himself, spending hours alone, reading, studying, and losing himself in his own thoughts. There was something about him people couldn't quite place. Something that made others uneasy. Grace saw it too, though she tried to explain it away. She would say he was just different. That he had a temper, yes, but nothing that couldn't be managed. But as he grew older, that temper didn't fade. It sharpened. Hundreds of miles away, in Texas, a teenage girl named Alyssa Garcia was living a completely different life. She was young, curious, outspoken. Like many teenagers in the early days of the internet, she found freedom online. Chat rooms became an escape. A place where she could talk, explore, and feel seen. That's where she met Stephen. He was older. More experienced. But online, that didn't feel as important. What mattered was attention. He listened. He responded. He made her feel understood. What started as casual conversation slowly turned into something more intense. For Alyssa, it felt like connection. For Stephen, it became obsession. Within months, he decided to meet her in person. He traveled across states, not as someone visiting, but as someone who already believed she belonged to him. Her parents warned her. They tried to stop it. But she was young, and he had already taken hold in her life. By the time she was 16, she was pregnant. At first, she hoped things would change. That becoming a father would soften him. It didn't. His anger grew worse. He struggled to keep a job. Arguments became constant. His moods shifted quickly, often violently. He would break things, shout, intimidate, and then later apologize. Not out of regret, but out of control. He would threaten to hurt himself if she left. He created fear, and then positioned himself as the only one who could calm it. It was a cycle that trapped her. When their daughter was born, Alyssa wanted to believe it would be different. But almost immediately, she saw signs that something was wrong. Unexplained bruises. Moments of silence where there should have been crying. A coldness in the way he handled the baby. Fear replaced hope. And eventually, Alyssa made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She gave her child up for adoption. It wasn't abandonment. It was protection. She believed it was the only way to keep her daughter safe. That baby girl was taken in by a couple in New York, who named her Katie. They raised her in a completely different world. One filled with stability, warmth, and love. Katie grew up surrounded by kindness. She was creative, thoughtful, and deeply empathetic. She loved animals. She loved art. She found meaning in expression, in drawing, in imagination. Her life, for nearly 2 decades, was everything it should have been. Normal. Safe. But on her 18th birthday, something changed. Curiosity. She had always known she was adopted. Her parents never hid that from her. But now, as an adult, she wanted answers. Who were they? Why did they give her up? Where did she come from? So she searched. And she found them. Stephen and Alyssa. At first, it seemed harmless. Just a reunion. A chance to understand her past. They started talking. Messages turned into calls. Calls turned into plans. Eventually, they met in person. For Katie, it felt like something missing had finally been found. But for Alyssa, something felt wrong immediately. She recognized the signs. Stephen's behavior started to shift. His attention toward Katie was too intense. Too focused. Too familiar in a way that made her uncomfortable. And then one night, everything crossed a line. He was found sleeping in Katie's room. There was no explanation. No embarrassment. Just defiance. Alyssa knew then that something was deeply wrong. She tried to warn Katie. Tried to explain who Stephen really was. But Katie didn't see it yet. Eventually, Alyssa left. She took her younger daughters and walked away, believing it was the only way to protect them. And that left Stephen and Katie alone. What followed was something no one could have imagined. Their relationship changed. It twisted into something that defied every boundary, every expectation. They began living not as father and daughter, but as a couple. And soon, Katie was pregnant. When Alyssa found out, she contacted the police. She reported everything. But legally, it fell into a gray area. They were both adults. There wasn't enough immediate evidence of coercion. So nothing stopped them. They moved to another state. Started over. Presented themselves as a normal couple. They even got married. To the outside world, it looked strange but explainable. To those who knew the truth, it was horrifying. When their baby boy was born, it seemed like they had created a new life together. But beneath the surface, nothing was stable. Stephen's control intensified. His obsession deepened. And eventually, the law caught up with them. They were arrested. Charged. Separated by court order. Katie was sent back to live with her adoptive parents. For the first time, distance gave her clarity. She began to see the situation differently. She started therapy. reconnected with her past, began to understand that what she had been in wasn't love. It was manipulation. So she ended it. She called Stephen and told him it was over. That one decision shattered him. He withdrew, isolated himself, stopped responding to everyone. His world narrowed into one desperate idea. Fix it. Get her back. Make it right. He convinced himself that if he could just see her again, everything would change. So one night, he took his infant son. He told his mother he was going to New York. But he never planned to come back. The next morning, Grace received that call. The one where he confessed. Police entered the house and found the baby unresponsive. At the same time, in another state, Katie and her adoptive father were driving along a familiar road. It was a routine trip. They had no idea they were being followed. Stephen had driven through the night. When they stopped at a light, he pulled up beside them. Seconds later, it was over. Gunshots shattered the morning. By the time help arrived, both Katie and her father were gone. Not long after, Stephen was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In a single morning, 3 lives were taken. A child, a daughter, a father. And behind it all was a story of control, manipulation, and a relationship that should never have existed. In the aftermath, people searched for answers. How did this happen? Could it have been stopped? Alyssa, speaking through grief, said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. I lost my daughter 3 times. At birth, to him, and forever. Katie was laid to rest in the same town where she had once dreamed of a future. A future that never came. And all that remained was a story that serves as a reminder of how dangerous unchecked control can become, and how sometimes, the worst tragedies don't happen suddenly. They build. Slowly. Quietly. Until it's too late.